This is an example of a number that is in standard form. Now, the thing that makes it in standard form is that the first number 3 is between 1 and 9. The first number has to be between 1 and 9 in order for the number to be in standard form. And then we have a times 10 to the power something. So those two things tell you that it's in standard form. So what does this mean? 3.4 times 10 to the power 3. Well, 10 to the power 3 means 10 times 10 times 10, which is 1,000. So it's 3.4 times 1,000. So if we do 3.4, if I multiply by 1,000, then my decimal point is going to move 3 spaces. 1, 2, 3. That's where my decimal space is going to go. I've now got 2 gaps. So in those gaps, I put a 0. So I get 3,400. And that is my number as an ordinary number. So 3.4 times 10 to the power 3 is the same as 3,400. In this question here, I've got 4.7 times 10 to the power 4. So I know my number is going to become bigger because it's multiplied by 10,000, 10 to the power 4. So how do I do that? First, I take my 4.7. I know my number is going to get bigger, so my decimal point is going to move to the right, 4 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4. And my decimal point is going to go there. Underneath each of the arches, I'm going to put a 0. So my answer for 4.7 times 10 to the power 4 is 47,000, 47,000. And that is the answer as an ordinary number. Take a look at these 3 questions. Turn them from standard form into ordinary numbers. Press pause and we'll go through them in a few seconds. Okay, if I take a look at the first one, 2.8 times 10 to the power 2. So I have my 2.8. I'm going to multiply it by 10 to the power 2. So my number is going to become bigger. So my decimal space moves to the right 2 times. 1, 2. Underneath the arch, I put 0. So my answer is 280. In the second one, I have 5.1. In the second one, I've got 5.1 times 10 to the power 5. I know my number is going to become bigger, and I move my decimal point to the right 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Underneath each of the arches, I put a 0. So my answer is 510,000, 510,000. In the last one, I've got 6.28, and I multiply that by 10 to the power 4. My number is going to get bigger by 10,000, so I move it 4 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4. Underneath the arches, I put a 0, so my answer is 62800, and those are the answers as ordinary numbers. This question here is slightly different. We have 3.8 times 10 to the power minus 3. Now the minus tells you it's divide, so we know that the number is going to become smaller. So it's 3.8 divided by 10 to the power 3. So what do we do in this case? We have my 3.8. Because my number is going to become smaller, my decimal point is going to move to the left because there's a minus 3, and it moves 3 spaces. 1, 2, 3. That's where my decimal point goes. I put a 0 underneath the arches, and there's a 0 point at the front of it. So my answer is 0.0038. If I take a look at this next example, 2.7 times 10 to the minus 2. The minus 2 tells me it's going to be divided, so my number is going to become smaller. So if I write down my 2.7, I know my number is going to become smaller, so my decimal moves to the left 2 spaces. 1, 2. There's my decimal point, here's my zeros. So my final answer is 0.027. Take a look at these 3 questions, press pause, and we'll go through them in a second. Okay, if we look at the first one, we've got 4.9. I know my number is going to become smaller because it's to the power -2. So I move my decimal point to the left 2 spaces. 1, 2. Here's my decimal point. I put in my zeros, so my answer is 0.049. In the second one, I've got my 8.6. I move my decimal point to the left 4 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's my decimal point. I put in my zeros. So my answer is 0.00086. In the last one, I've got 6.7. I move my decimal point to the left 3 spaces. 1, 2, 3. There's my decimal point. I put in my zeros under the arches, so I've got 0.0067. And those are my final answers as ordinary numbers.